just, it gave you parts of why Booth may have done this, as opposed to him just being this evil person. It kind of gave you a whole outlook on like how he was raised in the Shakespearean, you know, theater and like, you know, the Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, and, you know, we had to get rid of Caesar because he was evil and he was ruining Rome. And so, I mean, this is how he was raised up.
That was his motivation. Or that was the theory in the book.
Yeah, yeah. His motivation was not because, you know, let's just go murder someone.
Mm-hmm.
It was, you know, the South can rise again, and Lincoln was the one holding it back. You know, so I thought, well, what a way to explore that in a little time travel piece. So that's how Switch in Time came to be.
And next we're going to go to 1927?
1926.
1926.
But I believe we start out in the 2000s. And the synopsis for this one, this is called Painting Katherine. Washington, D.C. artist Vincent Vermeer's world is unraveling. He can no longer paint. He no longer understands his wife, Kate. When Kate inherits an old Victorian in North Tonawanda, New York, from her grandmother, Catherine Malloy, Vincent falls in love with the house and moves in. Kate remains in D.C. and the separation strains the marriage further. On the Victorian's third floor, Vincent discovers the magical violin that takes him back in time to 1926, where he meets 20-year-old Catherine Malloy. Catherine has given up her career as a concert violinist to marry Jethro Malloy, an abusive man. Catherine's beauty inspires Vincent to start painting again. He returns to the past several times to paint her portrait. Vincent also meets actor Norman Lasseter, who loves Catherine so much that he quits acting and turns businessman, partnering with others to build a grand theater in North Tonawanda. As Vincent grows closer to Catherine, he realizes what motivates his own life. He also realizes that Catherine's life would be better with Norman. Vincent can make this happen on December 30th, 1926, opening night of Norman's new Riviera Theater. He can change Catherine's life for the better, but dare he? Which was interesting.
Is any of that historically accurate about Riviera Theater?
Actually, yes. The Riviera Theater, which is in North Tonawanda, did open on December 30th, 1926. Of course, Norman's partnership in it is fictional because he wasn't really a person. But when the theater opened, it actually was called the Riviera, Rivera. And it was only, I believe, either in the 40s or the 50s that it was changed to the Riviera. They added an E in there, and, you know.
People still talk about the heyday of the Riviera Theater.
Well, opening night, I did a lot of research on the theater, and opening night was a major event. It was black tie. It was, you know what I mean? This was...
No baseball hats?
No. No baseball hats. Lots of derbies, but no baseball hats. A little bit from Painting Katherine. I once was a painter, Vincent Vermeer said as he stared at the empty canvas sitting expectantly on the easel. He ran his hand through his brown wavy hair and sighed. Once upon a year ago. The canvas stared back at him, waiting, always waiting. He reached out and touched the empty surface. It felt both smooth and rough beneath his fingertips. He had filled many such canvases with beauty over the course of his 40 years. But since his 40th birthday, he'd painted nothing. Nothing he dare show the public, anyway. Nor had he shown them to his dealer. Kate had seen them, though. He'd shown her the few pitiful paintings produced during his 40th year, and all she'd done was shake her head. Words had not been needed. Words would have stung far worse than the shake of her head. Vincent turned away from the easel and went to the window. He looked down on the quiet Georgetown street below. The street, like the facades of the 19th century townhouses that lined it, was brick. Vincent liked his brick street. He remembered the day 15 years ago when he and Kate, newly married and tired of apartment life, had met the realtor to look at the townhouse where they now lived. He'd fallen in love with the brick street. It was an archaic anomaly in the bustling modern world. It harkened back to a simpler time, to a romantic time when neighbors gathered on front porches after dinner and horses' hooves clopped as carriages drove by. Vincent smiled. Yes, the brick street remained. He and several of his neighbors, especially the elderly ones, fought an ongoing battle with the city fathers who wanted to pave over the brick. He and his fellow homeowners would never let that happen. Vincent grasped the window's brass handles and slid it up. A cold breeze blew in and he shivered, goosebumps rising on his bare forearms. He wore his usual painting clothes, blue jeans and an oversized 100% cotton beige-colored shirt. Kate called it his Williamsburg shirt because it reminded her of the craftsmen at Colonial Williamsburg. At present, he had the sleeves rolled up and held in place with black garters. He wore penny loafers on his feet. He took several deep breaths of the cold winter air. It burned inside his chest, but that was okay. It made him feel alive. Something he rarely felt these days. He would be 41 on Saturday. He prayed his birthday would end his artistic block. After all, or so it seemed, last year's birthday began it. He heard the furnace kick on in the basement. He started to close the window but stopped, catching sight of Kate's red Mercedes turning onto the street. What, he wondered, was she doing home in the middle of the day? He finished closing the window and turned back to his empty canvas. What would she say when she saw it? Would she accuse him of wasting another day while she was out working, actually supporting them, since he no longer was? She hadn't voiced these feelings yet, but Vincent knew they were there. He saw them in the resentment that lived in her eyes these days. She didn't have to see the blank canvas, though. She didn't have to know he still wasn't painting. He snatched a white sheet off the couch where he sometimes slept if he'd stayed up too late working. He threw it over the easel and covered the canvas. He'd never lied to her about his painting before. This would be a first for him. He hesitated, one hand reaching for the sheet to remove it. He heard her come in the front door. "Vincent," she called. "Vincent, are you upstairs?" "Yes, I'll be right down." He left the studio. He left the sheet covering the canvas. He met her on the second floor landing. Sunlight poured in the large stairwell window, lighting her up like an angel. She wore a dark green skirt and blazer with a pale green blouse. An ivory scarf covered with ivy encircled her neck, an emerald pin holding it in place on her left shoulder, the pin the exact color as her eyes. She had her long, curly, chestnut brown hair pulled back with a hair clip that matched her scarf pin. Round, steel-framed glasses rested on her long, delicate nose. She wore very little makeup. Her fair skin and natural long eyelashes didn't need much embellishment. He looked at her perfectly angled face, her cheekbones high yet subtle, her chin square, and couldn't help but feel exactly what he had felt the day he'd met her in his college economics class. He was bowled over by her beauty. As he did that day so long ago, he grinned a big old country boy grin. Her green eyes questioned him. He kept on grinning. "What?" she asked, setting her leather briefcase on the window seat. "You're extraordinarily beautiful, Kate." Her right eyebrow shot up. "Okay, and now this is when you tell me you haven't painted a blessed thing all morning." The words cut him. His grin disappeared. "Thanks for your faith." "Well, have you?" "Yes," he lied, surprised at how easy the lie came out. She started up the steps toward his studio. He followed her. "You can't see it." She stopped and turned back to him. Excuse me? You can't see it. And why is that? Because, he took her hand, because this might actually be something good, and I want to wait until it's done before I show anyone. I'm not anyone. I know that. She pulled her hand free and continued up the stairs. He let her go. He sat down on the stairs and waited for her explosion. She would lift the sheet, see the blank canvas, realize he'd lied to her, and she would blow. His hands formed into fists. He waited. He heard the studio door squeak open. He really should oil the hinges. Her high heels stomped on the hardwood floor. Then silence. She was lifting the sheet now. He knew it. The eruption was about to begin. Except the eruption was not the shouting he expected. Instead, laughter floated down the stairwell. He sat still, not believing his ears. Footsteps on the floor again, and then she was on the stairs next to him. "Vincent," she said, still laughing, "you're serious. You've got the damn thing covered." He couldn't believe that she hadn't uncovered the empty canvas. He sat there on the step, unable to speak. How could it be, he wondered, that his lie would go undetected? Kate sat down next to him and patted his knee. "You artists sure are something," she said, shaking her head. Mirth filled her eyes. "So you think I'm your artistic jinx now, is that it? If you don't show me what you paint, it'll be spectacular?" "No," he said, taking her hand. "It's just, well, I thought that if I painted the whole painting to completion without anyone seeing it or commenting on it, it might, you know. Time was when you couldn't wait to show me your works in progress." "I know, but..." He didn't know what to say. Not really. He was lying to her for the first time since meeting her. He was lying and not getting caught. He hung his head. She slipped her arm around his shoulders and pressed close against him. Her body touching his made him feel more ashamed than he already did. "I guess I can live with this new painting method. The suspense might kill me, though." She kissed his cheek. "You need a shave." Still not looking at her, he asked, "You're really okay with this?" "Yes, although it does hurt a little." He looked at her. "What hurts?" "The fact that I might no longer be your muse." He saw traces of sadness creep into her eyes. He touched her cheek. "Don't think that. That's not it at all." "Then what is?" "I can't explain it. I just think that no one, not even you, should see this painting until it's done." "A feeling you have?" He nodded. She smiled. "Then we'll go with your feeling, but you know how impatient I am." She stood up. "Where are you going?" She started down the stairs. "To pick you out a suit." "A suit?" He followed her. "For what?" She stopped outside their bedroom. "Okay, now I know you've definitely been painting, and all those creative juices of yours have been flowing." "Why?" She lightly patted his cheek. "Because you've forgotten. You're not dressed. Didn't answer any of my phone calls. By the way, what did you do with the answering machine? The phone keeps ringing off the wall." "Shut it off. The phone is turned down." "What have I forgotten?" She shook her head and went into the bedroom. "The reading of the will, Vincent." She stuck her head out the door. "Remember, my grandmother died 3 weeks ago? Not that anyone in my family was ever going to tell me." He slapped his hand against his forehead. "Damn, the appointment with the attorney in D.C., that's today. Give the artist a prize. Now come on. I may have missed her funeral, but I don't intend to be late for the will."
Now, how does it feel to revisit these characters after all this time? Like seeing an old friend?
Yeah, I really like Vincent. As the book goes on, I really like Vincent.
There's
Kate,
got to be some emotional investment there, spending so much time with him when you worked on it.
yeah, yeah, and Kate. Oftentimes when I was writing, I was mad at her. You know, I was. Anyway, how about just a little taste of when his first meeting. He hears the violin. He's finished working. They're at the house. He's living at the house now, and he's attempting to paint. He's created a studio at the house there for himself, and he is painting some things, but he's not all that thrilled with them. And so he finishes working, and he went downstairs and rummaged around the kitchen. Settling for a bowl of canned chili and a few slices of Italian bread, he ate it in front of the television, laughing at a rerun of Barney Miller. His stomach full, his eyes heavy, he stretched out on the couch. He drifted off to sleep just before 11. The melodious sound of Catherine Malloy's violin lulled Vincent from his sleep. He opened his eyes. The room was light. Sun shone in the big bay window. He glanced at his watch. 7:30 a.m. Catherine Malloy sure played her violin early, he thought, rising from the couch. His shirt half unbuttoned, his hair disheveled, he walked toward the sound, listening, smiling at the beautiful music. He walked up the stairs and down the hall to the staircase that led to the 3rd floor. He stood there, listening. Incredible, he said. He climbed the steps and found the bedroom door cracked open. In the back of his mind, he thought it odd that the door was open. He could have sworn he'd closed and locked it behind him the night he'd gone up to the 3rd floor. He stepped into Catherine Malloy's bedroom, and she was there. She stood in front of the wooden music stand by the window, playing her violin. Her lustrous brown hair fell in gentle curls about her shoulders. She wore a lacy white dress, its skirt nearly touching the floorboards. Its cuffs and collar were ruffled. She played with her eyes closed, not needing to read the music that lay open on the music stand. He couldn't name the piece she played, but Vincent knew it had to be Mozart. He stood just inside the bedroom door, speechless. What the hell was happening? Was he still sleeping? Surely this had to be a dream. While he watched, Catherine finished the piece she was playing and lowered her violin. She looked down at the music on the stand and shook her